This is going to be a relatively long video. I'm just warning you guys now. The source files were about 18 gigs in size. This is a Sony DTC750 DAT that has many problems. Let's get started. This is a Sony DTC750 DAT deck. A little bit of damage here to the cabinet. This is how it arrived. And this one here, according to the, I guess the notes, it said that the tape was stuck. Before I try powering it up, I'm going to remove the top so that I can do an inspection of the mechanism. So it's here's a look on the top of this unit. Mechanism's over here. And it looks like the tape is nicely crunched up inside there. This one's got a light in it. It's kind of in ugly shape, but if we look down there, we'll see that the tape itself is chewed. So I don't have to worry too much about the tape being damaged. It's already damaged. Looks like the turn the cam gear here to raise the tape, and unloop the tape. It's stuck around the back side of the capstan assembly. Okay, the damage to the tape is right at the beginning, so that can be certainly can be cut off of it. It's actually even not that extensive, but the very beginning of this tape is where the damage is. In that the first 10 seconds or so of playtime is where the damage is. So that could be certainly cut off the tape, and the remainder of the tape should be fine. This is an R65 DAT tape, so 65 minute. The professional tapes, they tend to make them a few minutes longer because in most pro applications they would record tone and so forth on the first minute or so of the tape, so that any damage that occurred would occur before the actual recording began. But we want to see why this thing is doing what it's doing, so the first thing I'll do is I'll observe the operation, see whether it'll load and unload, and what the problem is. It's probably not taking up the tape properly, but we'll find out. For starters, the belt that opens and closes is slipping, and I don't think that's the only problem. It's the mechanism itself is it's got a problem. So let's take a look and see why it's doing what it's doing. It seems to be jamming. Oh, I can see right now that there's a piece of the mechanism here. If we look down in through here, well, maybe we won't see it through there, but I can see a piece of this front loader is actually not in the correct position, and it's actually hitting the guides. So that's part of the problem. The back side of the cassette tray, when it goes down, is running into one of the guides. I don't know if you guys can see it or not. This light bulb thing is in the way, but if we look right down in here, this piece here, you're going to see that is going to hit against that guide when I try to manually close this. Okay, it goes down, and see? So I got to pull the mechanism out on this. So you can see why it's not loading properly. Once I've got the actual transport out, it might be a little bit easier to see what's going on with this particular unit. So it unplugs. I'll just undo the connections here and unplug all the patch cords, and the mechanism comes out with just a couple screws. So unplug the plugs, and this ribbon cable plugs into down below. We'll undo the cords and remove the screws. And the whole mechanism will lift out, and then I can go through the mechanism, see what the heck is jamming on this thing. This is similar to the DTC750. I think it's the same transport actually. And I have a spare transport that the head drum doesn't work on. Okay, so that lifts out like that. And we'll unplug the ribbon connector. Now we can check and see why this is behaving the way it is. Here are two mechanisms. This is the one that's broken, and this is the one that's good. If we look at the operation, we'll see that on the one that's broken, the way it goes down, it's jamming. See how that's going down like that? That's not how it's supposed to work. This is how it's supposed to work. If we look at the good one, it tilts up like that and then goes down. This other one is not tilting. And the reason why it's not tilting, I can tell you right now, is because somebody has buggered up the position on the cam gear. If we look over here, this pin rides in the groove, you see, like that. And if we look over at this other one, we will see that it's not riding in the groove, it's actually riding outside of the groove. This has to be sitting in this groove. So that tells me either somebody didn't know what they were doing that was working on this, or something. I don't see the paint seal broken there, but obviously somebody has had this unit apart at some point, and they didn't put it back together. They probably had the basket out. Is this loose? No, but see, there's a paint seal on here, which makes me wonder. Oh, the paint seal is broken. Somebody's had this apart. Somebody had this apart and they didn't put it back together properly. This has to ride in here. Rides like that. So if I put the mechanism back together in the proper position, it will probably work properly. Okay, now when I turn the mechanism, it lifts up and opens like it's supposed to. And now when I close it, cassette tilts into position properly and then loads down. Now one thing that does concern me is that this piece here might be bent. And it may be worth, I don't know, maybe it's not. Maybe it's okay. Let's just try loading a cassette manually. So I'll put a cassette in. cassette goes in. I don't know. This might be broken. I may have to swap this out with the other one. This is looking awful loose. This is a paid repair, so I mean I don't mind taking the front loader off of this mechanism over here to make this one work. See, that part's working now, but just the way that how the tape feels, this feels awful flimsy when the cassette goes in. It does tilt it correctly now though, and it does open the cassette up. So it is operating properly. It's just this, you know, feels flimsy, like maybe something's been broken. If we look at this other one over here, you see how this one is not flimsy? That one, just like that. So I think maybe what I may end up doing on this one, let's see if I can see why this one's so flimsy. Is there a plastic part that's broken perhaps? Or something that's missing. But it looks, we look at the two of them, this one here is definitely, you know, it's definitely loose. And whether it's just something that's not tight or whether there's something broken. But this is certainly very loose. I think, is there a piece? I'm just looking to see if I can see any pieces broken. Doesn't look like anything's broken, but see what I mean? How loose that is. Definitely got a problem. I think in this case, maybe it's better to change the whole basket, the front loader portion, and that might be the only solution to fix this thing. There are other differences besides this. The cassette baskets are the same, I believe, on both of these, but there are other differences between the two of them, namely in the transport itself. Like, for example, this one here has separate motors, whereas this one doesn't. We'll take a look on the bottom. So this is the DTC750 ES chassis, and you'll see that it has a BSL motor for the real drive. If we look at this other one, you'll see that this one here is a belt drive. It's a belt drive motor off of another pulley over here. So there's a real motor. This is actually the real motor here. It's just a standard DC motor. You can't, I don't know if you can see it or not, but right down in there, if you look closely, you'll see that there's a separate little DC motor right down there. You see it? That's the motor for the reel. So it's not driven off the capstan. It's actually driven off its own motor. It's just a DC motor as opposed to a much more expensive BSL motor that they used on the 75 ES. This being a 750. It's a less expensive, cheaper mechanism. The 75 ES was a very good, and you can tell by looking inside the transport here. On the 75 ES, you've got metal guide posts and stuff here, right? If we look down there, metal guides. And if we look over on the other one, it's a plastic guide, you see? So, not quite the same caliber of machine. And this one's using pin switches, I believe. Yeah, this is the cheaper transport. This is using these pin switches over here to detect the mode, whether it's in play or stop, or whether it's loaded or unloaded. It's using a couple pin switches that detect the position of the cam. And on this one here, it's using a rotary encoder switch. So The actual transport's totally different, but the tape loader looks to be the same, and that's really all that matters, is that we can get this thing loading and loading smoothly. The tape compartment should just lift right off. If I take out a couple screws here on the side, remove this screw and the one on the other side, this whole unit will lift off. And then we can swap them over. So this just lifts out just like that. I'm hoping that the problem is that the other one is just this piece is loose. We'll see when I get it apart. Same thing. Just the two screws to hold it together. And then the whole unit just will lift out. I mean, this doesn't feel bad, this part. I don't see anything broken. Well, we'll try this other one and see whether it works properly. If they're the same, they look similar. They look to be the same. One's got different cutouts on it than others, but they look to have the same dimensions. See if it'll work. That loads down properly. And that's certainly not as flimsy as the other one. That's how it should load. When I load it down, it goes into position, trips the little switches here. There, that's behaving more like it should. We'll try this. plug in all the connectors, and the unit hopefully is going to work, and that's all that's wrong with it, and that would be great. I'm sure there's probably more wrong with it than this, but we'll find out pretty quick. Okay, I think that's all of them. Okay, that opens. Now, will it play? Probably not. Doesn't detect that it's closed. Does not detect that it's closed. So we still have problems with this thing. If we turn the loading motor by hand, we can certainly put the mechanism through the motions. And the mechanism goes completely through the motions as it's expected to. I think it was just the fact that the tape was crunched a bit at the beginning. I've cut that section off because now when I drop the tape into position, it appears to be loading in the correct side of the guides so that the tape will thread. You notice down here, you'll see that the tape is sitting in front of the guides. I think it was just because it was crunched before that it was falling in behind them. So that's looking better. So let's try the unit again and see whether it'll thread. That's a little better. It's loaded now. Will it go into play? No, it won't. It says it's a tape in it. So we have another problem, and it won't open again. Once the tape is in, it tells me it's in, but the transport now, well, the play indicator's on here, but it's not doing anything. I'm thinking it's got to be one of the pin switches is not telling the microprocessor that the unit is fully threaded. So out comes the chassis again, and we'll take a look at the pin switches. The pin switches are used like a mode switch on these ones, and there are two of them. Part of the problem is these units are very old. They haven't made them since 2005. So most of these are from the early 2000s, late 90s. And a lot of them have been sitting around for many, many years. So we have a lot of problems to deal with. So great. That's why I didn't want to come out as easy. Okay, the switch I'm talking about is right here. There's a couple switches right on this little circuit board that are used to detect when the mechanism is loaded. I'll pull this little circuit board out and we can look at them. It's got to be something in this mechanism that's causing it to not operate. Either that or the mechanism's not completing its loading cycle. Could be that too. It just loads the tape and then it stops at that point, and it never unloads again unless you turn off the power, and then it unloads and loads. So I'm just winding down the mechanism so I can take out the last screw, and then the whole switch block should lift up. And I'm pretty sure that this came from eBay. The fellow that sent me this has sent me a few units. This will be like, I guess, DAT machine number 4 or 5, something like that. So on the bottom here, these are the switches I'm talking about. They detect the mode switch, or I should say the cam. These are the mode switch. They detect the cam position. This is the cam I'm talking about. the white cam in the bottom, you see it down here, down in there. As the mechanism loads, it just moves over and operates these two little switches. If the switches don't signal that the mechanism is loaded, then it's not going to do anything. It's going to just sit there. These switches do go bad. They are quite a common fault. Make sure they're plugged in. As I say, I don't know the history of this thing. I don't know who's been into it or what may have been done to it in the past. So I'm kind of guessing that nobody's unplugged anything and hasn't plugged it back in, but we'll get some cleaner and clean up these switches because they do go bad. I had a DAT that used the same mechanism. I think it was a might have been a 650 or 570. I sold it. It's one of the few DATs that I actually sold, and I sold it for, I got $50 for it. That's all I got for a DAT machine. A working DAT machine was $50. I hear people talking about how, you know, they're getting hundreds of dollars for them. Well, I've never got hundreds of dollars. I'd love to get hundreds of dollars for a DAT machine, but they're just not worth anything. So first we'll give these switches a shot of cleaner. This thing in position. And of course the other switches here too. The cassette down switches. What this is a rag to wipe up any excess overspray. Okay, now we'll try this one more time. See whether I've made any improvements or whether it's still going to be doing the same thing. This time I'll run it through the motions with the unit out, the deck out of the unit. See whether it goes through the loading cycle as it's supposed to. Still okay, that clicked that time. Might be the mechanism is gummed up and not loading fast enough. That's always a possibility. seems to be slowing down when it gets to that position. I think I'll take the mechanism apart and we'll check it for anything gummed up. So it is completing the loading cycle, but what I've noticed is as the loading motor completes the loading cycle, it tends to slow down. So I'm thinking maybe something is gummed up and is dragging this down, and it's not completing the loading cycle properly. Maybe a gummed up guy is jammed. So we'll take the board off the bottom and just do an inspection and see what we see under here. Besides circuit glue that goes conductive. So I'll undo a couple plugs so that I can get the board out of the way. So we have our real drive motor over here. This is our loading motor here. Capstan motor, drum motor. See, this is a different drum motor than the other unit uses as well. There's photo detectors here for take up and supply, which key off of the reflective reel tables. And this mechanism comes out. There's a couple screws that hold the mechanism in. So I'm going to pull these 3 screws out. So that I can look below the cassette deck and just see what's going on. Okay, this should lift out, I think. One more screw in the front. This is, I believe, the same as the, it's the same as the one I had, the 650 or 670 or whatever the heck one I had way back. It wasn't my favorite chassis. It was the one DAT deck that I had that did not like. I used to like to use the computer type tapes and longer, thinner computer tapes, and this mechanism was the one that did not like them. It would chew them up. It's got a couple solenoids on here to release, and another common problem on these is these solenoids come loose, the screws that hold the solenoids in. One thing that can happen on this is the loading gears, and they can get gummed up and get stiff. So we want to take them off and just see if the lubricant is dried up on the actual little gears themselves, because that can certainly cause a loading failure if the gears themselves get gummed up. And they do get gummed up. This one here is pretty stiff coming off this shaft, isn't it? Could be this one here that's just gummed up right now. Oh, that's really stiff. that might be the problem right there. How is this turned now? That's a little better, but yeah, this was dry. This gear's probably dry too. Not as bad as the other one. We'll take the gears off and we'll lubricate them. That could be the problem right there. This one was almost like glue. So let's clean that mess up and put that back together and see whether the mechanism operates any more smooth. This is the, over here, this is the slide cam, and this is operating very, very, very smoothly. Like there's no effort whatsoever to move that. See that? So that, there's no problem with this. That's showing me that the loading guides and everything is moving into position, even for the pinch roller. There's no effort required. To give you an idea of how little effort that I'm using, I'm just using a fingernail. Okay. So that's fine. The problem is going to be right here, right on this post there. So I'm just going to get a Q-tip and we'll get some isopropanol. We'll clean that up and then we'll re-lubricate and make that turn smoothly. And hopefully that's all that's wrong with this mechanism. That turns nice and smoothly now. And then the next gear also spins nice and smoothly. This is the one that was all gummed up. If you look on the bottom here, you can see where it's been dry. We'll put some grease on this. Put a bit of Molykote grease onto this one. But even now, it's going to turn a lot smoother than it was before. Oh yeah, I mean now, no effort at all. And the gear actually lifts off. I had to actually work at that to get that gear off. Let's just put a little bit of Molykote onto these bearings here. And then we'll reassemble this unit. And fingers crossed, it's going to work. I'm confident I'll get this thing working. They don't call me the DAT guy for nothing. So just the smallest amount of grease. We don't need much on these. Just the smallest amount of Molykote, and even onto the teeth themselves. And this is a lock, by the way. When the unit engages, what it does is it uses this to engage the pinch roller. So when you push play, it does that, and then that solenoid kicks in, and this little brake comes on here to stop this from turning. That's what stops it from disengaging. When you press stop, it releases that so that it can kick the pinch roller off of the capstan. Oh, by the way, this set screw over here, this one's actually to set the position of the solenoid that moves the brakes into place. So that's why it's not tight. It's got a little paint seal on there. So, but these ones do come loose, so you gotta watch those. They actually fell right out on mine. I could hear them rattling around inside the unit. I'm surprised it didn't blow something else up. But as I say, that unit is, I haven't had it for a long time. I sold that unit years ago. I think I bought it. Well, I bought it. I paid a lot of money for it too. I bought it at Cash Converters, if you know what that is. Anybody from around here will know what Cash Converters is. It's like a second-hand store. People that are having financial problems unload their stuff, and it's like a pawn shop is what it is, and things go on consignment. And I bought it. Oh, this is probably back in the 90s, 80s, 90s, when it was still relatively new, and I got it for a lot less than what a new one would cost. And I used it for a long time. Like it had lots and lots of hours on it, and then had some trouble with it, fixed it up, got some more. I got another DAT machine. I ended up picking up a DA40 and a 680, which had the different mechanism, and stopped using this little one that I had. It was similar to this. So I put it up for sale and sold it. And I've heard from the guy that bought it from me, actually, because he contacted me, I guess about a year later, to ask if I had any more DAT machines because he would like to buy another one from me. And it was still working. But I said, nah, you got the one that I was letting go, and you got it for a lot less money than I could have gotten for it had I held off. But you got to remember, I picked up two Tascam DA40s for $20 a piece. Yeah, they needed some work. They weren't functional when I got them. Okay, that's that back in place, that board. Now we'll get this board back in place. I'm going to plug these two plugs back in. They are color coded. It'll be interesting to see if this thing needs anything else once I get the mechanism working. Like, is the preamp going to need the caps done in it? It's always a possibility. These are all old, these units now, so the surface mounted caps inside that preamp are getting pretty long in the tooth. We will know by the sound, because when the caps in the preamp are bad, well, it just sounds like crap. Alright, should be able to plug this in and test it. Okay, will it open? Of course it will. Will it load? Of course it will. Will it play? It says it's playing, but it's not. Okay, it's going into play. Caps and motor's not turning. What about fast forward? No fast forward either. No rewind. But the loading motor is now doing what it's supposed to. We know the real motor will work because if I turn off the power and turn it on, we'll see that it does retract the tape. It does load the tape. But when I try to go into fast forward, the real motor's not coming on. Same with rewind. Although it's telling me that it's doing it here on the display, and if I push play, it's telling me it's going into play. And we see the pinch roller is indeed engaging. So that problem is solved. So what problem do we have now? If I try to put it in fast forward. I think it's the capsule motor's not turning. That's what it is. Yeah, I can see the tape tensioning, so the real motor's coming on. It's just the capsule motor is not budging. So now we have to investigate why is the capstan motor not working. We're getting there. We got some of this circuit glue on here. I wonder if that's causing it. Get rid of that crappy circuit glue that they use to glue parts down. This stuff is problematic. It causes all kinds of problems when it dries out. It becomes conductive, and this looks like it's starting to go the way it's turning color like that. Is this the capstan drive by chance? This could be the capstan drive IC. I was going to lift this board out again. I just want to look under this board. But I believe that's the capstan drive IC there. Capstan motor's not turning. That's the problem now. Everything else appears to be working like it's supposed to. And one of the connectors comes up to this pin here, this header, and this is connected in through, seeing where it's connected. Is it connected to this IC? If we look at the traces here from this is the connector that goes down to the capstan motor. If we trace a couple traces here, we'll see that they do go to this IC. And of course, this is where this glue that breaks down and becomes conductive, and that was getting pretty brittle, that glue. I'm sure it probably was going conductive at this point. So let's just try it again and see if it was that simple. I hope it's not the capstan motor. Make sure that there actually is nothing, and that all the wire ties are pushed flat, and that nothing can touch it. I did a good visual inspection. There's nothing that's anywhere close to the capstan motor that could jam it, at least nothing that I can see. I don't think that there was anything touching it either before. There is quite a bit of space there because the wires are held up by a clip, and the wires were under the clip, so I think we're okay. Let's just try it one more time. Let me hook it up here. Oh, guess what? It's moving. I don't know if there's anything on this tape or not. We'll find out, I guess, pretty quick. Is there anything recorded on this tape? Counter. Absolute time. I don't think there's anything on this tape. No, there's nothing on this tape. So let's just get another tape and see if it works. Okay, are we going to get any sound? Well, we have tape transport now, but we have no music. And this tape does have something on it. The tape counter's moving, the remaining counter, and the counter's running, but nothing's coming off the absolute time, though. Therefore, we're not reading anything off the tape. That could be capacitors in the RF preamp that are bad. It could be bad heads too. First things first. Let's see if it's just dirty. After all, it did jam a tape. That damaged tape could have contaminated the heads. So let this play for 10 seconds. And then try a known good tape. Still get nothing, so I'm not going to try the clean tape again because clean tapes will wear down the heads. We may have a an RF problem coming off the heads. The preamp may have a problem, so that's the first place to look. We'll take the preamp apart and see if there's a problem with that. The preamp is on the back of the chassis, held in place by one screw. And unplugs on this side as well. So there's the preamp module. It's yeah, looks like somebody's been into this, doesn't it? Well, let's just open this up and take a look at it and see how the caps look in there. So we have a bunch of surface mounted caps in here. What do you bet they're shot? The chances are pretty good that they're wide open. So Mr. ESR meter to the rescue. Let's see how bad these are. I bet you they're all bad. 17, yeah. 2.1, yeah, that's also probably bad. 10, yeah, it's toast. These are all toast, so we're gonna change them. 16. That one's open completely. That one's open completely. So these all got to go. They're all small, relatively small value. I should have some small ones that I can put in place. Let's find them. I'm going to cut out the 22s that are all negative facing towards me here. So that's a 22, that's a 22, that's a 22, and that one's a 22. We'll take out these three first. This is my preferred way of taking these things out of the way, so you don't risk damaging the traces on the board. And then you can lift them off. Like that. And then clean up the board. You can now break the plastic, and once I do that, then the pins will just lift right off. You can see the corrosion that has been left behind on the board here from these caps that leaked, right? You can see all the corrosion there. So let's just remove the pins that remain, and then I'll put the three new ones in. So we'll get some solder to do this. My old roll of solder is empty now, so I gotta grab a new roll. Or pretty darn close to being empty if it's not. So we'll just open up the new Chinese solder roll. And I use the solder to basically, the flux and the solder to clean the board while I'm taking the pins off. So I just add some fresh solder and the old pins will just lift right off just like that. No need for anything fancy, no need for a fancy air station. I'll hear it from my trolls that tell me that I have to have one. And that's because that's all they've ever used. But I've never used one and don't intend to. Don't need one. Not for this work anyway. There's the third one going in. And they can lie flat like that as long as the pins aren't touching together, the leads aren't touching together. We're good. Just making sure that this one's not going to short out. I can lay them flat like that. That way the case will go back on, no problem. Okay, the last two 22s are these two, and then that one there is the 47. So let's cut out the last two 22s here. That one. And that one. And I hope that the liquid that leaked out is not damaged the traces. Like to be okay from what I can see. I'm going to take out the 47 and just replace it first, just because it'll be a little easier. Is that a 47 or a 4.7? It's a 4.7, not a 47. Good thing I double checked. Okay, caps are replaced. Get them worked over here so I can put them back into the shield. They should be low enough profile that they will work. And it'll fit in here quite nicely. Just like that. Okay, the deck is plugged back in. Let's try it out. Fingers crossed. Are we going to get anything? Oh, I see absolute time that is showing up on the screen now. That's a good sign. Yes. I would say success. Let's mount the chassis because this one is done. Okay, the mechanism is attached back into the chassis. I can now put the DAT lid back on and we'll give it another test. Why won't it close? Oh, must be something with the lid. Better check that. Seems to be jamming with the lid. May not be attached all the way. Let's see here. Sounding good. Let's check the AMS to the next track. Yep. Go 2 tracks down. Looks like it's working. Excellent. I'm going to try the tape that was stuck in the machine. I cut off the bad part at the beginning, so I probably lost a few seconds at the beginning of this tape. Not much I can do about that, though. Yeah, so he's got music on here. I'm going to listen to this. Oh well, his tape was a bit crunched. I couldn't do much about that. It was already jammed in the machine. So he's lost the first few seconds of that track. I don't know if there's anything else on the tape or not. I guess there is. Yeah. Now, one thing I notice on this mechanism is it's not real quiet like some. This is a gear-driven mechanism. When the top cover's on it, it certainly won't be as loud. But these ones here are much louder than, say, the 75 ES with its dedicated real drive motor. This one with a standard DC motor and a belt drive and the gears and stuff, it is noticeably louder when you're winding the tape at high speed. That is nothing. This one here is functional. It's sounding great. I'm sampling his tape. Oh, it's a live performance. So you think it's fixed, right? Wrong. We're not even close. There's still a few things that I need to fix on this before it goes home. Okay, what the hell else is wrong with this thing? It's either my jack or it's the plug. Let's try this one. We got a bad connection on the board. What else am I going to find with this?
Regulators, that's what.
It's like one thing after another. So now I got to pull the board to get to the connections on the back because I don't think I can get to them any other way. I might be able to pull the back and just, I'll try pulling the back and see whether I can somehow access. Somebody's had these screws out too. There's screws missing from the back here. I'm going to pull the screws out and see if I can access the board. It sounds like one of the connections is broken. And I noticed it when I was moving the line out cord around. Just inviting something to break. Can I get to those connections through here? I think I probably can. Yeah, they're cracked right there. I can see them. I can see the connections cracked right along the back. And I can get in there and fix them without having to remove the board. Sounds like it's pouring out tonight. There. That should hopefully solve my problem. Let's check the regulators while we're at it. These have a tendency to break. And in this case, they're loose. So we'll redo the regulators while we're at it as well. There. That should take care of the regulators. Okay, one last test. Everything's tight now. Nothing cutting out. Okay, let's see how quiet it rewinds now. That's a little better. Open. There we go. Time to listen to the guy's tape that came with it. Thanks for watching. We'll catch you in the next one real soon. Bye for now.